Hey everyone, welcome back to Q&A Thursday. I've got a little bit of a cold today, so thanks for bearing with me. I'm not quite at 100%, so I might have a few sniffles throughout this video and whatnot, so thank you for understanding. Okay, so we'll get right into the questions. First question is from Kathy, and Kathy asks, when do you use the series and edition number fields for low content books? So for the series title, I actually always use the series title when I'm publishing books. And what I do is when I've created my batch of 10 books or 20 books around one particular idea or niche, I will create a series title for that entire group of books. And of course, they have to be numbered when you're entering the series into KDP. So what I'll use that for is basically just to insert another 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 extra keywords in that field, because KDP does crawl all of the title information for keywords. So it's a great place to put additional keywords. Of course, the main thing you want to watch out for here is that it has to sound natural, and this is not a place to keyword stuff. You cannot keyword stuff. It's against the terms that KDP has laid out. But if you can work them into a natural sounding title, then you're good to go. So just, try not to abuse this feature. But if you can insert that 1 or 2 extra keywords that will kind of cover, whatever that whole batch of books you're doing is, that's a great place to just slide in a few extra ones. With regard to the edition number fields, I've never used that with low content publishing. To my mind, that's just always, usually something for, say, a nonfiction book where some information has been updated and now they re-release that book under a new title, but they're telling you that this is, the second or third edition of whatever that original book was. So I haven't really considered a way that this might be used. If anyone has any ideas, feel free to share them. But for me, I've not used that with low content publishing. All right, so another couple of questions from Kathy. I've seen some books that use colored text in their description, just say 1 line of blue text or yellow text to highlight, for example, that it's a 6x9 2020 planner. What are your thoughts on this, and do you personally do this? So, I think it's definitely okay to highlight certain areas of your description. But I think these types of things need to be used sparingly, otherwise it can end up looking like a mess. So the reason we use highlights and things like that is because we want to bring attention to something. But if we're doing that to too many elements in the description, then what you end up doing is calling attention to nothing because there's just too many things highlighted. So I think highlighting something like a size in a description, I don't think that's necessary. In your product details area, when you scroll down a bit further, it's got the size and all of that stuff there. So I don't think it's necessary to actually highlight that in your description. Again, I think you just need to pick out what are the 1 or 2 most important features you want to highlight, and then highlight them that way if you want. I personally do not highlight anything in my descriptions. I like to keep mine nice and clean, and I just do a nice clean format of that description, which will include a headline, a kind of a sub-headline, and a few bullet points, but I don't tend to add color because I think that can actually tend to look a little bit more confusing. If there's too many colored things going on in your description, what your eye tends to do when you're on a web page, or even in a print book for that matter, is if you're seeing colors around the edges, so from the rest of the website, your eye tends to bounce around all the different colors because your brain is actually trying to form patterns. So with the Amazon website, because there's kind of a lot of colors and patterns and stuff going on around the edges, I like to keep that description black and white. And that really just tends to keep the eye focused on what's in front of it, that description. And then I use some subtle HTML just for some bolding, some italicization, some bullet points and things like that. So just to keep it as clean as possible. And that's personally how I like to do it. All right, some cover designs use the words rose gold, gold, glitter, marble, etc., which I understand can be misleading to the customer. So if your book cover design is a gold monogram letter on a marble background, for example, is it best not to use these words when listing a book, or to avoid these types of designs altogether? So I think you do have to be careful with using, especially things like glitter or gold, just because it's not going to look the same printed as it is on your computer screen. Now, having said that, I've used things like gold gradients to give that gold effect. I think the key here is if you're going to use something like a glitter effect or a gold effect or a marble effect, you need to just put that into your description so that it's, like you said, it's not misleading to the customer. They need to know that it is a glitter effect or a marble effect. I think with marble, that's pretty... I don't think you need to go there with the marble. People know that they're not going to be getting a book that's actually made out of marble. But with the glitter especially, or the gold, like a gold foil, that can be confusing. Someone might receive that and think that they've ordered something with actual gold foil on the top. And then obviously that's going to be disappointing when they receive it and it's just a printed version of that. So I think just calling it out in the description is good enough if you do want to employ any of those design techniques. All right, do you ever put the size of your book and number of page in your subtitle? A lot of people seem to be doing this again. So I used to do this in all my books back in the CreateSpace days, but I noticed when I went over to KDP, I'm pretty sure they say not to do this. On their help page where they've got how to fill out your subtitle and title information, I'm pretty sure it says not to do this in that information section. Double check this. So basically I've just avoided it since then. I really try hard not to do anything that's against any terms that KDP has set forth. It's also not necessary. If you scroll down to the product detail page, it has the number of pages, or the product details section of your page. It has the size of your book. It has the number of pages. So it's really not necessary. I think if you want to call that out in this description, you can. But I just don't do it in my subtitle. I tend to just try and fit those couple of extra keywords in there, again, sounding natural, and I leave it at that. All right, next question is from Aminol. Again, I'm sorry. I've had one of your questions before, and I'm so sure I'm mispronouncing that, so sorry. If you only select keywords that have 1,000 or more search results, don't you limit your finding of keywords? For example, if you were to search for a baby shower guest book in Merchant Words, besides a couple of relevant keywords, most of them have under 1,000 searches per month. How do you then generate a list of 1,000 plus search volume keywords? Would you go down a notch and simply search for guest books in Merchant Words to generate those 1,000 result keywords? So I think what you're talking about is 1,000 search volume. So there's two different things. There's the search volume, which is how many people per month are searching for a particular keyword, and then the search results, which is how many show up on Amazon. So I want to make sure that I'm getting that correctly with your question. So the 1,000, that's the search volume. So I think you're talking about the same thing here because you're talking about Merchant Words. So for me, what I generally tend to do is I will, like you said, I will search for the broader keywords. So in this case, it might be guest books. And when you type that in to Merchant Words or Publisher Rocket, you're going to get every single keyword that has guest books come up in it. So I kind of reverse engineer it in that way. I'll type in that broader one, and then I'll just go down the dozens and dozens of keywords, and I will just find the ones that have search results for over 1,000. And then I will take that over to Amazon, and I'll make sure that they don't have more than 2,000 or 3,000 search results. And that's when I know I'm kind of onto something. I think if you start off in your keyword tool just looking at something that's already quite niche down, like the baby shower guest book, then because it's showing you other keywords that have that exact keyword in it, you're not going to come up with many results. So you do want to make it a little bit broader when you're using a tool like that, because that's just going to give you much, much greater search results. And then you can sift through. So let's say I type in guest books and I'm scrolling down and I see baby shower guest books, and that has over 1,000 search volume per month. then I might choose that one, and I might see if there's any other related ones. And that's kind of how I do that. So it's, yeah, you're kind of starting a bit broader and then narrowing it down. So that is how I would use a tool, and how I do use tools like Merchant Words and Publisher Rocket. Okay, Anna would like to know, how did you learn Illustrator and InDesign? Maybe you can recommend any good course on YouTube, tutorials for that. I'm creating my covers and interiors using Canva, but I have a lot of ideas and I would like to try something more professional. So I have a background in art direction and graphic design, so I learned that software in my college days. So that's probably the main reason why I'm still using it to this day, because frankly, there are a couple of less expensive alternatives out there. So right off the top of my head, I would say Affinity Designer looks great. That looks to be right up there with InDesign, and it is a fraction of the cost. So InDesign, if you get the entire Adobe Creative Suite, it's about $70 US per month. Affinity Designer, I think, don't quote me on this, I think it's around 50 or 60 bucks for just a one-time payment. And it looks to be fantastic. So that's a great alternative to InDesign if you want to get a little bit more professional. I think Canva actually does a really good job with the covers. I think you could definitely keep on using Canva and basically get the same results that you're going to get out of a program like InDesign or Affinity Designer. I think where a program like InDesign or Affinity really comes in handy is with the interiors. You can definitely create interiors in Canva, but you're just going to get so many more options, so many more just features out of a more robust design program like InDesign or Illustrator or Affinity Designer or any of those programs. So I would definitely recommend, once you get going and if you've got some money coming in, it is a great investment. There is going to be a bit of a learning curve, which wraps right back around to your question, where can I recommend a good course? So I don't have anything off the top of my head. Now, I've been thinking about creating a couple of tutorials, but I need to kind of figure out where everyone is, the tools that they're using. So I am happy to throw together a few simple InDesign tutorials. If anyone's interested in that, you can comment below. And, if there's enough interest, I can certainly create a couple of tutorials on InDesign. And hopefully what I'd like to do is purchase Affinity Designer and create some tutorials for that as well. So let me know if that's something you'd like to look at. Let me know if you'd like to see a tutorial and what professional design software you'd like to see me do that tutorial in. So that could be InDesign, that could be Affinity Designer, would probably be the two that I would recommend. There is a free one actually called Scribus. I know a few of you are using that, and so that's something I could download and probably quickly wrap my head around and offer a few tutorials for that as well. So maybe just comment below and tell me which out of those three programs you would like to see a couple of tutorials on, and then I can provide that for you guys in the coming weeks. So let me know about that. Okay, I think that answers it. Okay, so then we have also from Anna, a couple more from Anna here. Do you still publish nonfiction ebooks on KDP, and do you think it's still a good passive income opportunity? So I no longer publish fiction or nonfiction books. I do think it's still a good opportunity, but the reason I like low content publishing is because you're cutting out the middleman and essentially getting rid of the bulk of your expenses. And in many cases, you're getting rid of pretty much all of your expenses if you're creating the books yourself. So I did have success with fiction and nonfiction. It was much smaller success. After a couple of years of doing it, I think I was generating like $4,000 or $5,000, and probably about $3,500 of that was profit. So I mean, that's not bad for a part-time gig for sure. But I just think there's so much more potential with this model, with the books, unless you're creating the books yourself, in which case you're not going to be able to scale because you have to actually write the books. What that means is you actually have to hire an outside writer to write that for you, and that's not cheap. If you want something that's good quality, you have to pay a decent writer to do that, and it gets expensive. So, when I was publishing my fiction books, I was paying about $500 US per fiction book. And, as those prices increased and different changes were made on KDP, my profit margins were just getting slimmer and slimmer. So I just decided to quit pursuing that altogether. I know some people still do, and, they're doing it to great success. So, I'm certainly not saying don't look into it. For sure do. But for me, I really like this business model, and this is where I personally have found the most success. But there are definitely still people out there generating really great passive income streams through both nonfiction and fiction books. All right, last one. Okay, in one of the courses on how to publish ebooks on KDP, they recommend lowering the price when launching to get some more sales, or maybe even reviews, and then increasing it back later. Do you think this may apply to low content books, or it's not a good idea? So I think this can be a great idea. If you want, you can launch a book at a lower price point than what you intend to try and generate those first few sales. And once you've started to get some traction in that book and you're starting to get, moving up in the bestsellers rank, and especially if you've got a few reviews, then go ahead and add another $1 and see what happens. You can always go in and tweak these things, so never be afraid to test things out. This is all about testing. And what works for some person is not going to work for someone else. So I think in order to have any success, you've always got to be testing and experimenting. So I think this is a great way to test things out, especially if you've got some reviews and a good bestsellers rank. I see no reason why you shouldn't go in there and experiment with another $1 and then track your sales, because some less people might purchase it, but you might end up with greater royalties. So you kind of have to track that information. And then if it's not working out the way that you want, you can just put that back down $1. Or if you're finding that your royalties are really, you're generating more royalties, try another $1. Just, you can always back that up at any point. So I would definitely say experiment with that. This is something that I've always wanted to experiment with myself, and I just haven't. And I'm kind of kicking myself for not, but I would actually like to experiment myself with this tactic. So maybe I'll do that and I can report back to you guys and see how that goes. All right, so that is it. Thank you so much for watching again. Sorry about my nasal voice. Thankfully I wasn't sniffling too much. But yeah, have a great weekend coming up here, you guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.